I'm VNN's Brittany Harlow, and this is a special report.
New Year's Eve 2020. Many were celebrating. At the Federal Communications Commission, commissioners were adopting and releasing an 11th hour report on the communication industry. Literally, the last day they could legally publish it. Its contents, which have seen little news coverage since December 31, are that of which we at VNN have been waiting for. The 2020 Communications Marketplace Report, much like its 2018 predecessor, details a broad spectrum of communication, like rapid growth in the social media and streaming service industries. But our main concern at VNN is local news. Let's hit some report highlights. Consolidation first. Perhaps the most telling, what was left out of the 2020 Communications Marketplace Report: acquisitions. In 2018, the report went in depth discussing the buying and selling of television stations, highlighting the biggest purchases during that time period, as well as how many stations were sold over a 2-year period. In the 2020 report, the phrase "stations were sold" is not mentioned even once. Don't worry, we know of a few acquisitions. Even if the FCC suddenly found this information to be irrelevant, station wheeling and dealing is mostly amongst companies called station groups, companies who own a lot of television stations. In January 2019, Gray Television announced their completed $3.6 billion acquisition of Raycom Media. In September 29, Nexstar acquired Tribune for $7.2 billion. In December 2019, private equity firm Apollo Global Management closed the deal on Cox and Northwest TV and radio stations for $3.5 billion. In February 2020, Univision sold a majority of its stake to private equity firm Searchlight Capital and their partners for $526 million. The FCC greenlit that sale last month. In September 2020, Scripps announced it was buying Ion Media from private equity firm Black Diamond Capital Management for $2.65 billion. That deal is expected to close the first quarter of this year. The 2020 report does list how many markets each station group is in and how many stations they own, but it doesn't take into account pending transactions like Scripps buying Ion and what that will look like. A transaction Scripps says will make them the, quote, largest holder of TV spectrum in the United States. So why was the meat and potatoes of media consolidation left out of the latest report? We're not sure, but it seems like a good time to touch on the battle the FCC is gearing up for at the Supreme Court to allow them to relax media ownership rules. The FCC has been trying to loosen up the media ownership rules since 2003, but the courts have beat them back every time. A few years ago, the FCC tried to ditch a ban on companies owning a newspaper and a TV station in a major market, which would allow corporations like Fox to own both TV stations like WWOR-TV and newspapers like the New York Post, both serving New York City. The FCC has been granting temporary waivers to WWOR, who was licensed in New Jersey, for years, despite the fact that their Jersey operations were shut down in 2013, and they've been operating in New York ever since. The FCC also wants to loosen up other ownership restrictions too, but in 2019, the Third U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals said the FCC did not adequately consider the effect its sweeping rule changes will have on ownership of broadcast media by women and racial minorities. The Supreme Court will hear the case on January 19th. What's the big deal? So what if media ownership consolidates? Opponents of consolidation have shared some possible negatives. Corporations may not share information harmful to their interests. Corporations may contribute to the merging of entertainment and news, increasing sensationalism. Corporations may be biased towards special interests of the owners. Corporations may be a force for standardizing culture. The main concern for many, again, is that media consolidation reduces diversity in both ownership and content. It's an easy lead into why the FCC sets ownership rules in the first place. In their own words, the Commission has long imposed limits on concentration of ownership of broadcast media in order to promote the Communications Act goals of competition, localism, and diversity. Speaking of competition, as we said, most station sales go from one station group to another, and there is a mad dash happening right now to gobble them up. Why? 2 words: retransmit dollars. These fees are paid to local TV stations by cable, satellite, and more recently, streaming platforms to retransmit their broadcasts. And it's the new favorite revenue source for TV stations, much needed thanks to ever-declining advertising dollars. Where are those missed advertising dollars going? Flashback to social media and streaming services. We know that competition amongst the heavy-hitting station groups is fierce, so how has that diversity been doing? Not good for a long time. The fourth report on ownership of broadcast stations released in February 2020 provided a bleak update from 2017 data. African Americans own just 0.8% of commercial broadcast stations. American Indian or Alaska Native women lost all 8 commercial broadcast stations in which they held a majority ownership interest. Women own just 5.3% of commercial broadcast stations, down from 7.4% in 2015. The number of stations has steadily declined over the last 5 years too, and not all of them air local news. With consolidation rampant and fewer stations in operation, what is the FCC doing to increase diversity in media ownership? One of the final paragraphs of the FCC's 2020 report states the Advisory Committee on Diversity and Digital Empowerment intends to provide advice and guidance, host events like workshops and symposiums, and make recommendations, all in the name of promoting diversity. Circling back to the Supreme Court battle, in the past the court has said that assuring that the public has access to a multiplicity of information sources is a governmental purpose of the highest order, for it promotes values central to the First Amendment.
How will that play into the FCC's attempts to change their ownership rules? Stay tuned. For VNN, I'm Brittany Harlow.